Hello, and welcome to another review video. This time around, I'll be looking at the GA Bunko Collab. This is a brand new collab arriving to pad, and like with Dengeki Bunko, GA Bunko has an assortment of characters from different anime. These being, Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon, Goblin Slayer, and My Isekai Life. There is a total of 27 REM units, and most notably, you can assemble 2 meta teams from this collab alone. But because NA has missed out on a couple of the last few collabs, and also because we know a bit more of things to come, I no longer feel like rolling as much as I originally was planning to. I still think it's a good idea to roll a decent amount of stones in this collab. The big chase cards for me used to be the units needed for Bell teams, but due to us not having access to some Disney and Weekly Shonen units, those teams will not be able to effectively farm dungeons like SN5 or the UN Rush as easily and as fast as the JP versions. The other meta team here consists of various wood units, primarily Ais and Ryu Lion. These teams are much easier to build than Bell teams since all of the Ais and Ryu team members have higher pull rates or can be exchanged for GA trade fodder. Bell teams are pretty expensive since you need multiple copies of the BGM and batch units. Hopefully you'll have an easy time at least assembling an Ais team. If you're going after an Ais team, I would say that you have to be willing to spend somewhere between 200 and 300 stones in this machine. This way, you should have a good chance of getting the mid-priority units that are pretty essential for Ais teams as of now. And if you want to go after Bell teams and are not planning on spending any money getting one of the BGMs, as a starting point, you should be willing to spend at least 500 or so stones. Obviously, you could get really lucky, but I think as a starting point, you have to be comfortable with the idea of at least spending that many stones. As I said, I'm not as hyped as I once was for the Bell team, so my goal for this REM is to just get the Ais team and stop rolling. Let me know what you think and what your goals are for this machine in the comments below. Maybe I'll convince you that the Bell team is not worth the investment, or maybe you'll convince me that even the Ais team is not worth it at all. Also, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. To start, I'll be looking at some of the non-REM units that are available via metal exchange or as descended drops. The rainbow metal units are one-time only exchanges, so it's never a bad idea to get them in case these are ever useful. None of these look particularly useful at the moment, except maybe Hakugen if you like damage equips. Goblin Lord has a lot of competition in the dark department, and he fails to stand out as there is no shortage of dark damage dealers that generate orb. He does give you a fixed board with his active skill, but since it's on a high cooldown, he probably won't be used that much in rankings. Usually for those dungeons, if you're using a fixed board unit, you often hasten back up to reuse them, and an 8-turn cooldown is too high to be repeatedly used. Not to mention that the resulting board doesn't look all that useful, at least to me. 2 GA Bunko units do need him as a Sync Awakening material, so if you have any plans to use Goblin Slayer or Priestess, make sure to grab Goblin Lord to save yourself a Sync Awakening Tamadra in the future. Juggernaut is the descended boss that Bell, Hestia, Ais, Ryu, and Sanjono need to unlock their Sync Awakenings. This Dark unit is a piercer with a large damage multiplier, which isn't special at all. Dark is notorious for using BDPs for piercing, but I guess none of Juggernaut's awakenings lock him into dark teams, so you could use him elsewhere if you need a pierce unit, but I doubt you'll have much use for him outside of being a sync material, so just remember to get at least one copy of this descended boss. Usually, the reward unit has been a weaker copy of the batch unit, but for this collab, the reward is a weaker version of the BGM unit. This unit is better than most of the other reward cards so far. Obviously not as good as the Omnium version, but this unit can also be used in some in-game Bell teams. I'll talk more about what the BGM unit does, but you often have 2 copies of that unit in a Bell team to loop their active skill effects. This free unit could be used as a replacement for a REM version since they have the same active skill. The big difference is obviously their damage multiplier. Still, make sure to complete the GA Bunko Novice quest to get this unit, as it might be very useful at times if you are chasing a Bell team. Okay, now onto the units that you can roll. Unless you're very new to the game, I doubt that you'll get much mileage out of these 2 units. I honestly think that the Dwarf Shaman is the worst unit in the machine. The base form is one of many wood orb generators, and this one doesn't really stand out, especially because Ais is now available in NA. Even his equip isn't particularly unique. We have seen multiple equips that give a long-lasting roulette and time buff, such as Wizard Moon's equip. This collab also has another alternative, Proud Wolf's equip. Dwarf's equip does give a bigger time buff and more move time awakenings, but if you're comfortable with fast roulettes, I would say that Proud Wolf's equip is the much better option. Guild Girl does have a lot of utility, but the active skill will most likely interfere with other units. This mainly goes for the cap break effect, as either the damage dealers will cap break themselves, or effects from looping cap breakers will get overridden by this unit's active skill, and you might experience some downtime. I wouldn't go as far as calling this unit useless, since she does cover a lot of holes, but I still struggle to see where to use her, since most teams run units with a lot more focus. This unit's leader skill does give 4x coins, but this is probably something only people in the very early game might be interested in. As soon as you're able to clear some collab colosseums or some of the later technicals, you will not have to subject yourself to farming the Sunday dungeons with this unit as a leader. The dungeon boost equip isn't too bad, but I still think that these equips are not worth running on endgame teams, since a 2% increase on dungeon drops is not all that significant. Due to the haste and the rainbow OEs, I do think that this one is one of the better ones, but I would still be fine with only one copy of Guild Girl, only on the off chance that I'll ever feel like using her equip. These two units don't really have a home right now. Dark TPAs are a weak archetype at the moment, but maybe with that special roulette, Lizard Priest could find a place in a Milim or Lelouch team. That is, if you're still playing those type of teams. But probably not, since those teams are very restrictive, and Lizard Priest doesn't deal with any other important mechanics to justify a team slot. The same goes for High Elf Archer, but she has even less use since wood teams are notoriously non-existent. Obviously that has changed with Ais' arrival, but even then, that wood leader has no need for this unit at all. Both of these 7 stars have equips with 3 TPAs and either a dungeon boost or power break awakening. Neither are particularly useful since the TPA units that are meta at the moment do not want those specific sub-attribute awakenings, though maybe I could see the Elf's equip being used in some farming team due to its low cooldown, 30% gravity. The Slimes are a very perplexing unit. I have no idea what the active skill's purpose is. Maybe just to override long-lasting no Skyfall debuffs? This is a very unreliable way of generating orbs. With them being a rainbow unit, you would ideally want a rainbow board, but the board refresh could be very unkind to you and not even give you 4 different attributes. Since they have a 1-turn cooldown and could really use a Levitate Awakening, they could be a decent holder of Schneissel's equip, which will grant them a big damage boost and turn them into a looping shield. Though the better option for rainbow balance teams is the Yuji and Slime duo unit that comes with a 40% damage reduction shield. At least Slime's equip has a bit more use due to its awakenings, but it is completely overshadowed by the recently buffed and ever so useful equip from Homage. Asterios is a light orb generator on a 2-turn cooldown. It could be used as a replacement for various units like Militia and Crowley, though obviously this is a much worse option if you need to preserve heal orbs. I don't think the base form will see much use, but at least they have a very strong multi-targeting button equip. It has the same multiplier as Vivian's, but it instead deals light damage and is 1-turn shorter. It also does not pierce, but that might be preferable in some ranking dungeons to reduce animations. I would try to keep all my copies of Asterios for his equip. It is overkill for buttoning novice dungeons, but it might be needed in some higher difficulty descended dungeons or for other very specific farming builds. These 2 units are probably not going to be used much. They can deal some decent damage, but their active skills are not that essential. Aisha does give a fixed board, so it might come into play for some ranking dungeon. On a 7x6 board, she does create enough orbs for 2 dark BDPs, 1 dark L, 1 fire BDP, and 3 other fire combos. In JP, I don't think I've seen her being used for a ranking yet, and maybe she'll never be used, since the active skill also has other effects that slow it down. But if you care about ranking dungeons, it never hurts to keep at least one of each unit that gives you a fixed board. Yamato's low cooldown gravity is interesting, but she's not the first unit to have an active skill like this. Yuji and Megumi are somewhat comparable, and they didn't stick around at all in JP. Also, the gravity will be wasted on an enemy with the damage absorption shield, since the voiding effect is activated last. At the very least, these units and Aisha's equip both have decent damage awakenings for dark units. Priest style is a rebuffer and piercer. Most teams already have solutions for this mechanic, either by tailor-made piercers for each archetype like Orthor, Remda Trio, and obviously Omnimon, who also happens to sneak into a lot of teams, even if those do not primarily match Omnimon's colors. So this priest will pale in comparison to most other piercers. Of course, he could be useful if you have nothing better, and he's not the worst option. His awakenings do bring a good amount of utility, and he can even serve as a 7x6 base. His equip does seem a little bit more useful, specifically for SN4. This one adds cat type, and those monsters have their HP boosted in that dungeon. Also, there are plenty of strong, dark, and devil enemies, so the Devil Killer and Dark Damage Reduction Awakening can be very useful to have. Sword Maiden is a low rarity cleric with an auto heal effect. The 45% auto heal is nothing to scoff at, but it does require you having 6 light orbs on the board. Pretty much any good light team will be able to guarantee those 6 light orbs every turn. For example, Crowley generates 6 light orbs, so more likely than not, you'll be able to activate Sword Maiden's active skill. There are still some risks of not meeting the condition, and you might prefer a cleric that focuses on utility rather than damage. But that 45% auto heal could be very useful to supplement your healing in super altitude dungeons. This unit's equip is a bit underwhelming, but I can definitely see it being used in a light break farming team for non-super gravity dungeons. So dust off those Henrys. For what dungeon? I don't know. But the multi-turn cap break could now allow you to tackle dungeons that Henry otherwise could not. Minotaur is a skill boost stick. This is the only unit in the game with 10 skill boosts, and only Valeria and her Path Academy variant have more of those. Ejido can provide the 11 skill boost with the skill boost ++ latent, but there might be times where you can't use that latent, like in a certain button in team for the annoying ordeal quest that we'll see sometime soon. I'll share a team whenever those quests come to NA, but those of you without multiple Valerias might want to keep all of your Minotaurs for this type of niche situation. Wolf's purpose is also to farm dungeons. He's basically a worse and fire version of Namiel. He doesn't have a no Skyfall leader skill and only handles void shields, but if you don't have a swipe team yet, you'll want to keep 4 of these around, if you manage to get that many. Unfortunately, all of the rolls from the REM will come out fully awakened, so if you want to get rid of the core to farm faster, you will have to use a down Tama. Sanjuno is a dungeon boost stick, and that's about it. You can put her in an UN Rush team to get a 12% XP increase, though her post-transformation active skill might not pull its weight. Her active skill is a little iffy, but for that specific dungeon, you could use it to override Noah's HP debuff. Outside of that dungeon, it might be hard to justify bringing her along since her cooldown is way too long and you'll most likely have to give up a button equip since you're definitely not going to be able to overcharge her. Dungeon drops and experience are calculated at the start of the dungeon, so her having dungeon boost awakenings post-transformation is purely cosmetic and a bit of a troll on Gunho's part. She is an interesting unit, but as you can tell, she doesn't have many applications. Most of the times I've seen her being used as a sub has been in Bell teams to farm UN Rush, but those typically include Aurora, who is not available in NA. HP for those farming teams is very tight, so even though we have access to all of the units but Aurora, teams in NA are not going to be as fast or easy to build as they are in JP. Proud Wolf can be a very useful sub for various teams. The looping fast roulette and time buff is rare. Only Miyuki from GA Bunko and San Bariat from Monster Hunter have similar active skills, but this unit is better suited for newer dungeons since its active skill can destroy a shield and help recover 4 turns of assist removal. In addition, this unit can also deal with attack debuffs. The equip could also have some uses, but its effects can be easily interrupted. Overall, I think the base is pretty solid, and if you're exchanging for any GA Bunko units, I would try to avoid using Proud Wolf as fodder. Priestess is exchangeable for 5 collab or 5 GFE units. This is one of the few clerics with 8 heal OEs, and she also has a few other utility awakenings. The thing holding her back, apart from only having 2 Ls, is the fact that she doesn't have an attribute other than light to utilize her L or cross awakenings. Compared to newer clerics, her active skill is also a bit lacking. Sure, it's on a short 4-turn cooldown, but units like Vivian, Stella, and Sword Maiden have generally better secondary effects. Just giving an enhanced board won't be doing that much in my opinion. Her equip is very solid and can turn a 1-turn cooldown unit into a great looping shield. Units like Halloween Shuri and Christmas Patty can definitely make good use of this equip for its active skill and its heal OE awakening. If carefully timed, those units with this equip could also become your cleric if the dungeon conditions allow. This exchange might be worth a look towards the end of the collab. Goblin Slayer and Priestess is exchangeable for 5 collab units or GFEs. They usually pair with standalone Goblin Slayer to provide more consistency with their 7x6 leader skill and orb generating active skill. The bigger board and orb gen allows for more combos to be made, which is very important since this unit and standalone Goblin Slayer depend on hitting 10C to reduce damage with their leader skills. Though including this unit in a Goblin Slayer team means dedicating 4 units to orb generation, which does not leave a lot of room for other subs to counter dungeon mechanics. This unit doesn't offer much to those teams and is usually the first to go when you try to optimize them. At the very least, this duo has an equip with solid awakenings, and the active skill could easily be overcharged to fix HP debuffs or to deal with a shield. But at the end of the day, I would argue that this unit is not worth the exchange, even if you manage to pull 3 Goblin Slayers, as those teams have a few more issues apart from this unit. Goblin Slayer is the aforementioned pair to the previous duo unit, but like I said, you are slightly better off giving up the duo and running 2 of these as leader and helper. You do miss out on the 7x6 board, but by matching the 3 jammer combos from this unit's active skill already means hitting 15 combos, so there really isn't a need for a bigger board. The biggest downside is missing out on the FUA from the duo unit, but thankfully, this unit seems to be weak enough so that you're not at risk of being executed by units with resolve. Okay, maybe this is only true for SN5. In older dungeons, you'll probably be one-hit KOing most enemies, and those left with 1 HP really love their execute moves. So these teams are in an awkward place. They are definitely overkill for older content, but will struggle a lot in the newest dungeons. Especially so if you go with the double Goblin Slayer teams. This unit's active skill does generate enough heals for a hard column or a box to counter resolves, but you'll want to be matching hard Ls to get this unit's full damage potential and reduce damage in the newest dungeons. Or if you don't need to reduce damage, you might need to match 2 heal TPAs to do some meaningful healing in super altitude dungeons. Another weakness of Goblin Slayer teams is the low raw HP, which won't allow you to leap through hits after undead animations. Super Reincarnated Nohime's active skill does help deal with these hits with her delay shield effect, and she can also counter time debuffs and roulettes. So if you are dead set on making this team, Nohime is going to be one unit you'll want to have in your team. Mei Mei from JJK would have opened some more doors for this team. Her leader skill boosts HP and recovery, and her low cooldown active skill can deal with a lot of gimmicks. But unfortunately, we never got that rerun that introduced this unit. So overall, the teams for this unit are inflexible, do poorly in modern dungeons, and will require a heavy investment for 2 or more copies of Goblin Slayer, or maybe even the duo unit. And that fodder could go a longer way if you invested in a nice team. Thus, I would try to stay away from this team, so do yourself a favor and don't use your fodder on the last 2 units. This last unit had a part break drop rate boosting leader skill. In my heroines review, I said that I thought the leader skill worked like egg drop boosting leader skills, but that doesn't seem to be the case. While researching GA Bunko units, I came across this post from a JP player that concluded part break leader skills are multiplied after you add the drop rate increase from part break awakenings. So these leader skills are a bit more likely to save you 1 or a few part break awakenings. This all depends on if you're using 1 or 2 part break boosting leader skills and on the base drop rate for parts. I don't think that any of the units with this type of leader skill are that impressive, at least for now. Since Gung-Ho keeps releasing more and more units and equips with part break awakenings, I still think it's easier and better to stack part break awakenings whenever you want to farm parts. Yuji and Slime is exchangeable for 5 collab units or GFEs. Their Evo active skill gives a beefy 40% damage reduction shield. This is one of the few units so far that has this damage reduction percentage in NA. He can be an OK rainbow leader, though his leader skill restricts you to balance type units. Team building won't be as difficult since nowadays we have plenty of equips that can add monster types, but for balance specifically, we missed out on a few good equips from the Disney collab. This unit's leader skill is a bit on the average side at 5 effective HP, but the shield from the active skill and the HP buff from the next unit make UE teams very tanky. This equip can turn any damage dealer into a Yuji sub, or maybe even play a role in the future dungeon SN6, since there, the HP for balance types is buffed. But at the end of the day, I'm sure you could find a better SN6 equip. Standalone Yuji is an exchangeable unit that takes 10 collab units as straight fodder. The base form is more balanced type Rainbow support, but as it's been the case with Rainbow teams lately, this will face a lot of issues in new dungeons. We got access to Claudia recently, and I would argue that she is a stronger Rainbow leader than Yuji, so if you chase after her already, I don't see much incentive in going after these teams. Obviously, these leaders differ in various aspects, but maybe the most notable is the much lower skill boost requirements. Not to mention that various units from this collab are balanced type and are decent Yuji subs, like Proud Wolf or Dryad. You can loop 2 base Yujis to get 1.5 HP and time buffs, along with a damage spike and cap break effects for balanced types. This unit and the Yuji duo are often paired, and these leaders have low effective HP by today's standards. So that 1.5 HP buff and the 40% shield from the duo unit are basically needed to handle new dungeons like SN5. But since that dungeon is scaled to account for physical units, you will still need equips on the Yujis like New Year Albrechts to meet HP thresholds and deal damage. SN6 does boost balance type HP, so you might think that it'll be Yuji's time to shine, but that dungeon is way easier than SN5 if we go by some of the meme clears that have happened so far. I haven't seen a Yuji clear yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if it could, and even then, I wouldn't think that proves that this team is worth the investment. Evo Yuji will probably see a bit more use in fire teams, or even as a semi-rainbow leader due to his easy to activate leader skill and large recovery boost. He is missing Fua, but he does add 5 combos, so maybe you could find a way to make him work. The Evo is definitely stronger since he can deal a lot of damage and destroy a shield, but his active skill only voiding absorption shields for 1 turn on a fortune cooldown can severely slow down your team. Just picture facing an enemy that has an absorption shield and has a super resolve. Yuji has a leader swap equipped that adds 10 OEs and balance type. This is very unique and might see some use in SN6. Even though you need 2 of them to system the base form, I would only get 1 at most to either use its Evo or equip. Yeah, Mare teams can definitely make use of his Evo, but fire teams overall are much weaker in NA than in JP since we don't have access to Aurora from Disney. Thus, this unit might not see much action, especially if you like to tackle endgame dungeons. I'd say that the Yujis are low priority trades. Maybe come back to this and the previous unit on the last day of the collab and see if you'll actually make use of them. Hestia is the orb skin unit and is a very useful cleric. She has tons of utility with her heal OEs for Elves and Heart Elf Sync Awakening that can allow you to either run the Skill Boost ++ or Assist Recovery Latents. The only bad part is that only teams that use Fire Orbs will be able to run her to recover assist since she doesn't have any other attribute. Her cleric active skill is a bit on the long side at 6 turns, but the delay and attribute change for enemies could be very useful in dungeons like SN3 or UN Rush, where delayable enemies enrage themselves for a turn, or in dungeons with very tanky water enemies. Hestia can also be a decent fire leader for new dungeons, since her leader skill provides bonus combos, follow-up attack, a good amount of bulk, and a higher recovery boost than HP to help deal with super altitude conditions and thorn orbs. Her Evo is a looping shield with various utility awakenings. Her heal OEs in this form won't be that significant to be relied on as your soul recovery stick, since she can only get 4 at most. But including her alongside another cleric that has 6 or more heal OEs can make healing a bit easier in super altitude dungeons. It's hard to compete with the better looping shield that offers more bulk, healing, and a roulette, but depending on your team, maybe you'll prefer Hestia's other awakenings. Her equip can add a lot of skill boosts and team recoveries, so it's not a bad option for newer dungeons to boost your healing potential. In JP, the base form hasn't seen much use since she is overshadowed by Aurora. Even Bell teams would rather use a unit like Opta instead of Hestia, since that slime unit can serve as a cleric and looping shield, and the heal OEs on Hestia are basically useless for Bell teams. Opta's shield is much more important than the bulk that you would get from the GA Bunko badge by having an old GA Bunko team. Even though Hestia has 2 very useful forms and an okay equip, I don't think she's worth the $20. I would be happy to roll her while chasing Ais or Bell, as she can be useful in some teams, but she's not worth the money, especially if you have someone like Stella. Bell and Hestia is the BGM unit and a very important sub for Bell teams, since those rely on this unit to auto-heal. Those teams need 2 copies of this unit to loop that effect. Therefore, you'll want at least 2 copies of this unit to run a strong team. You might be able to replace a Bell and Hestia with their reward counterpart since they also have the same active skill. But since teams in NA will not have Aurora, you will most likely need 2 RAM versions of this unit to meet HP thresholds. Bell and Hestia also provides a cap break effect, which Bell teams also rely on to deal damage, so you can see why this is a very important sub. You can still make use of only one of this unit as a B-Noah leader if you pair with another friend, but soon we'll have access to Valentine Athena. This seasonal badge unit does not heal as much as Bell and Hestia, but you can get away with a 50% auto heal for most dungeons by stacking more team HP awakenings or using HP buffs like those from Frey Weird. Plus, with B Athena, you'll only need to dedicate 1 slot to an auto healer and cap breaker. Even some endgame Bell teams do not need this BGM unit thanks to B Athena. Though since she's a badge unit, that means using about 100 magic stones to get enough B Athena fodder, assuming you have no other Valentine units. Valentines will return sometime this month, so if you haven't been saving up stones and don't want to spend money buying bundles, you might not have enough resources to make a strong Bell team. If you somehow manage to get multiple Bells early on and none of this duo unit, I might cut my losses and go after B Athena next. I haven't seen any Bell teams that run B Athena clear UN Rush, at least none so far. So if farming that dungeon is your main goal, you still might want to chase at least one of this BGM unit. Bell and Hestia's equip is very strong. Even though I don't see much value in the Dungeon Boost Awakening, this might be worth the chase or the $30 if you like the 3 team HPs and 5 effective skill boosts. Bell is the badge unit, so you need 14 GA Bunko units as exchange fodder to get 1 copy, or you could buy him for $30. You'll most likely want to get at least 2 copies to make his teams, since post-transformation, they make up a 3-unit system. Before you get there though, your team will need to come up with 40 skill boosts to transform him, but since the pre-transformation leader skill gives a huge HP boost, you could stall from the get-go. But in this day and age, who has time for that? You could just use his Heart L Sync Awakening to run the skill boost plus latent and help mitigate that 40 skill boost requirement. That Sync Awakening is pretty useless apart from that, since his active skill will eat all the hearts on your board, meaning that you can't get the damage reduction or attack boost that you would get from matching a Heart L. The base leader skill also provides an XP boost just like Daichi's, so this unit is a popular option to farm UN Rush. Bell teams in JP can clear that dungeon and others like SN5 relatively fast, but stop me if you heard this already. Aurora. There are still Aurora-less NA-friendly builds that can tackle those dungeons, but obviously these versions are not as fast and efficient. Check the playlist below in the description for some sample teams. The main selling point for Bell teams, at least for me, was their speed, and without that Disney cleric, Bell will not be able to farm those dungeons as quickly as I would like. Him being a pure HP leader means that he has issues dealing with gravity attacks. Back when Daywolf and Royal Knot were meta, most of the newer dungeons did not have gravity attacks, so these leaders didn't have to worry much about them. Or if those attacks were present, they only occurred once and could be dealt with by bringing 1 large shield. But then dungeons started to have more gravities more often, and so the meta shifted. We're at a point where you ideally want your leaders to have a mix of damage reduction and an HP buff in their leader skill to deal with gravities and hits after undead animations. Bell doesn't care about the latter, but he might quickly fall out of fashion if we start seeing more and more large, unavoidable gravity attacks present throughout dungeons. Though if you only care about XP farming and miss that on Taichi, Bell's lifespan might not matter at all to you. The typical Bell team pairs 2 of this transforming unit and either subs in another one or his Evo form to close the origin loop. Evo Bell trades the damage absorption and shield break for an HP buff and a worse board. Still, the trade-off might be worth it to tank bigger hits and fix HP debuffs. Bell's equip is great for SN5 parts farming teams, and the long-lasting cap break might also be good for some other farming teams. So for a Bell team, you will want at least 2 copies of this unit, since that is the bare minimum that you need on your side if you pair with a Bell helper. At a cost of 14 GA Bunko units, you will be required to roll a lot in this machine to amass the fodder needed. Not only that, but since NA teams will need to make up for Aurora, you will most likely want 2 BGM units to reach HP thresholds. But again, you could wait until B Athena arrives to make a slightly cheaper team. Thus, if you want a Bell team, get ready to roll a lot. Even if you disregard Bell teams, you might still want to grab a copy since the badge is really good on Ice teams. Dryad is one of the best clerics for Ais themes, especially in newer dungeons that drastically reduce your recovery. I do wish she had more heal OEs in her base awakenings, since for convenience, you will most likely want to run 4 Ls on her, and having only 4 heal OEs might not cut it against boards with a lot of thorn orbs. The recovery boost from the active skill can help you tackle those, but as it is with any cleric that has a secondary looping effect, you might be unable to rebuff every single time that the active skill comes up, since you'll need to save the skill for a certain floor. Not to mention that enemies can also disrupt your recovery buff with debuffs of their own. This unit can be replaced by other wood clerics like Chahil My Melody or Path Island Oichi, and even Cowgirl that also comes from this collab, so if you don't manage to roll Dryad, you might not be completely out of luck. Obviously, you'll miss out on badge bonuses if you run a non-GA Bunko cleric in Ais themes, but these aren't that bad of replacements. Her equip can turn a 1-turn cooldown unit into an auto healer, which probably makes those 4 team recovery awakenings a bit less valuable, but maybe you are running a team that uses both ways of healing. I would keep at least 1 copy of Dryad, even if you're not interested in Ais themes. This cleric could be used in different teams, or maybe her equip will be just what you need for a very niche team. Though one bad thing about looping an effect via equip is that this could be easily disrupted by assist removals. Cowgirl is also a viable cleric for Ais themes, but compared to Dryad, this unit lacks Ls and exchanges utility for 2 team HP awakenings and more skill boosts. Her active skill exchanges the looping RCB boost for a 15 billion cap break to your leaders that lasts for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. Some Ais themes do actually run 2 Cowgirls to loop their cap break buffs. The benefit of running this unit as your cap breaker is that you reapply the cap break every 3 turns instead of every 7 turns with Evo Ais, though this is also risky if you are unaware of where in the dungeon you'll get awoken bound or face unmatchable debuffs. This is a common issue when you try to loop your clerics. Also, if you run 2 Cowgirls in a team, you will only have 1 other free slot in the typical Ais theme. Her equip isn't particularly interesting, but it could be useful somewhere. SN5 could be a decent place since the equip grants you physical type and provides some bulk and effective skill boost. The Wood Resist Awakening might even be useful to tank the Dragon Knight trio's first set in floor 7, as long as you don't bring that enemy to super resolve right away since they'll change to light attribute. If you manage to roll a few of this unit, I would try to keep at least 2 of her, either to loop 2 of the base form or to have access to both of her forms in the same team. Liliruca is a pretty essential sub for Ais, at least for the time being. Her active skill counters a lot of nasty debuffs. Maybe her targeted attack buff is more important than usual, since this unit is Ais' only way of countering targeted attack debuffs that could severely limit your damage output. The fixed origin aspect is also very useful for Ais, since she needs at least 10 wood orbs on the board to be able to transform. There are other ways of ensuring at least that number of wood orbs on the board, like Enigma's wood equip, but since Liliruca's active skill is on such a low cooldown, you can use whatever equip you have on her at the beginning of the dungeon and haste her back up with your other 3 team members to finally transform Ais. This unit is packed with a lot of skill boosts and team HPs, though if you run her along Cowgirl in an Ais team, you open yourself up to getting skillbound, since these 2 units are missing skillbound resist. This unit brings a lot of utility and an incredibly useful active skill for Ais themes, so it's not a big surprise that Liliruca is a staple in these themes, at least until Freyk arrives and all of these GA Bunko units, except for Ais, are dropped for the new wood meta team making the rounds in JP. Still, until then, this unit is a very important Ais sub, but you only need 1 copy of her, since their equip is not that impressive. Ryu Lion is a very strong wood unit that pairs nicely with Ais. This unit can counter a lot of mechanics with her low cooldown active skill. Thankfully, her damage absorption void effects last for 2 turns, meaning you'll be able to deal with enemies who have those shields and a super resolve. The active skill, Shield Break effect, is also nice, since this mechanic is very common in new dungeons, and unfortunately, Ais themes do not usually run any other units that can save you a turn with that effect. Like with the previous Ais subs, Ryu is only obtainable via rolling. Therefore, if you get unlucky, you might have to pair with a friend Ryu and run Ais as a leader on your side. This might cause problems if you need to counter leader swap and expect more than 2 turn skill delays. This might not be too big of an issue since Ryu's roulette does last for 2 turns, so you could use it to fish out your 2 needed wood combos to activate Ryu's leader skill. But that will assume that the enemy won't be messing with your board, while one of your Ais is skill delayed. Ryu is a good asymmetrical pairing to Ais due to this unit's damage reduction leader skill that can let you tank 500% gravity attacks without needing a shield. Ryu's equip, on the other hand, is very underwhelming, so I wouldn't pursue more than one copy of her, and that's only if you care about Ais themes. After Frey's introduction, in about 2 months, the new Wood meta team will not even use Ryu as a sub, so that's even less of a reason to go for more than one copy of her. Ais is an exchangeable unit that takes both GFEs and GA Bunko units as straight fodder. She is a very strong Wood leader that continues to be highly rated in JP. As I mentioned, Wood will get a stronger leader with Freg, but until then, Ais is the strongest Wood leader in the game, and you can easily assemble her teams if you pull enough in this collab. As with Bell, thankfully base Ais has a Heart L Sync Awakening to help stack skill boosts via latents. The base form serves as your orb generator that deals with attribute absorption and damage void shields, all on a very short 2-turn cooldown, meaning that you can system 2 copies of her. Her damage is lacking if you don't put a levitate equip on her, so that's something to keep in mind when using her in super gravity dungeons. Speaking of damage, her active skill does not break her damage cap, which raises some eyebrows, but since cap breakers are now a thing, this is not much of an issue. I mentioned you could run 2 cowgirls, but she will only cap break your leader and helper. Ais Evo is usually the preferred option, and she cap breaks all of your Wood units. But Evo Ais cap break is only for 8 billion, whereas Cowgirls is for 15 billion. If we assume that all of your damage dealers will reach the damage cap, you will deal about the same damage. Though with Evo Ais, you also gain access to a looping shield. One bad aspect of Evo Ais active skill is its cooldown. At 7 turns, an enemy could change your team's cap break right after you use this active skill, and waiting until your Evo Ais is back up again will be pretty annoying and maybe even deadly since a lot of spawns can execute you after a few turns. And without a large cap break, you might be unable to kill the enemy before they finally execute you. This is the usual Ais theme, and half of it consists of Ais copies, who is again exchangeable and therefore pretty accessible. So to run the team, you will have to chase some of the low rarity GA Bunko units. Ais equip isn't that interesting. It does help you meet the basis transformation requirement, but Liliruca's active skill covers this already. And as I said, that unit is pretty much a staple in Ais themes. Things will change once we get the new Wood GFEs, Freyg and Karkinos. Here is an example team. As you can see, only Ais remains out of all of these GA Bunko units. So even if you get unlucky pulling for Ryu, Liliruca, or Dryad, you still be able to use your Ais in the future. I do believe that she will age better than Bell, since we are missing some pretty important subs for the latter. At least with Ais, we know for sure she'll get more support with GFEs that are guaranteed to come to our server. Since you'll need 2 Ais as subs for a Freyg team, I feel like it's not a bad idea to at least get 1 pair of this GA Bunko unit if you want to play a meta Wood team. Maybe you don't have a lot of stones at the moment, but with Ais, you have the option to use GFEs as straight fodder and skip this RAM, so you can treat those 2 Ais as an investment. You might not be able to play with her for the next couple of months, but in the future, you can get your free Freyg and have a meta team for the price of 10 GFEs. I did say free Freyg since whenever the new GFEs debut, we'll have the option of choosing 1 out of 5 GFEs. There will be a bit of a problem if you want to go with the optimal Freyg team in JP at the moment, since you'll also want to get Karkinos, and unfortunately, the only way to obtain the new GFEs on debut will be in a 20 Magic Zone Super Catfest that I really do not recommend rolling in. So you might not complete your Freyg teams right away, but since Karkinos is a GFE, they are bound to come back in other future Super Catfests that hopefully have better rates and are not as expensive as 20 stones per pull. So to summarize, I do think it's a good idea to roll a bit in this collab. Even if you get unlucky, I would try to exchange for at least 2 Ais. If you do so, in a few months, you'll have the best orb generator or a Freyg team, who again, you could get for free. But if you want to play with Ais ASAP, hopefully you manage to get Ryu Lion, Cowgirl, and Liliruca. Chasing a Bell team will be very pricey if you're going for the team that uses 2 of the BGMs as subs. And as I've mentioned probably too many times, missing Aurora deals a significant blow to Bell teams, so maybe you won't have the nicest time with this very expensive team. since Bell teams won't be at full power in NA, I do think you might be better off not chasing this team. So if you're going for the full Ais team, I would recommend getting at least one Bell or the team badge. Even that one single Bell could be used in an SM5 team once we have access to Viatina. With about 300 stones, I think you have a good chance of getting a full Ais team and a copy of Bell, so I would go into the REM with that number in mind. If you have a lot of stones, I would still caution about spending too many in this REM, since you might want to roll a significant amount in Valentines for at least one Viatina and 2 or 3 Binoas if you missed her last time around. I've already talked about why Viatina is good with some of these units, but I'll share more details soon whenever that seasonal reruns in NA. Binoa can also make use of her, and that swipe unit has become even better in JP with the latest rerun of Gundam. Binoa is now able to swipe pretty much every dungeon in the game, including SN5 and the new dungeon in JP, SN6. Who knows if we'll actually get a timely and full rerun of our Gundam reskin, Gung-Ho Alternate Journey, but that is a 10 Magic Stone collab with 3 different RAMs. Even if we do get it, it might come late like our last Marble reskin rerun. And then you'll need a hefty amount of stones spread out across this RAM, Valentine's, and AJ to get the optimal teams. Well, you don't really need to use stones in this RAM to get the optimal teams that use Binoa, but the point I want to get across is that you could better use your stones in Valentine's and Alternate Journey rather than chase a Bell team. And you might need a lot more stones if you want the needed subs for what some of the JP tier lists are calling a team that is on the same level as Omnimon. I am still a bit skeptical about the placement, but this team, led by Temis, who is one of the new GFEs introduced alongside Freg, is very strong and very easy to pilot. Path Cafe and Haikyuu are on the horizon, so if you're excited about either, you might want to again save up and not roll that much in this collab. We have no details about those RAMs, and we have no idea if Haikyuu will ever come to NA, but like with most machines nowadays, they might require a few hundred stones to get something worthwhile. Let me know about your plans for this collab in the comments below. I've shared how I feel and have decided that I'll throw around 300 stones at the machine in hopes of getting a full Ais team. If I don't get it, I'll just exchange for 2 Ais and wait for Freg. I passed on Binoa last year, and after seeing her applications with the new Gundam units and Valentine Athena, I now really want to get 2 copies of her. Hopefully Gung-Ho doesn't disappoint and brings us a timely and full Alternate Journey rerun, but who knows what will happen. Alright, that does it for this video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you guys for watching, and a special thanks go out to Aegis #1 and Awkward Panda, Breastfeeding Obama, Dark Silencers, and Hello Derpy for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.